Welcome to the Business Men and Women of Color podcast. I am your host, Ann Alston, and it is my pleasure to bring quality programs to all of you. I am so excited again today to be back with another amazing professional speaker who I have been following on Facebook and utterly amazed about his accomplishments and all the collaborations that he's doing out there in the community. So please stay tuned and listen to this full podcast as well. I want to encourage everybody to please go to all of the pages. We have over 50 speakers in this podcast this year that is sharing some tremendous information you don't want to miss. You can't get it anywhere else. So take advantage of this unique opportunity. Just in case you did not know, the purpose of the Business Men and Women of Color podcast is not only to share our industry information, but we are also here to encourage our professional workers and career seekers who may be entering their line of work. I also want to take a moment to thank our corporate and business sponsors, our family of authors, Butler Armstead Consulting Solutions, Human Resource Learning Center, J&F Enterprises, and Women Offering Wealth, along with many of our business partners and sponsors who's helping to make this event a success. So today I want to get right into it because we have a lot of information to cover. We have on the podcast the none and only Brian Oles. Yay, Brian. He's a native of Baltimore, Maryland. I'm really excited for him. He began his journey as a public speaker in 2006. He delivered his first speech at Morgan State University Toastmasters Club, and from there, he has worked to perfect his skills to the point where he has actually got a standing ovation at the end of his speech. In 2015, he earned the opportunity to advance to the semifinals of Toastmasters, competing against the top 100 speakers from around the world. And each year, nearly 30,000 people compete in this competition, and he was able to compete in that aspect. Brian holds a BA in Business Administration from Morgan State University, and he has a master's certificate in Instructional Design and Audit Learning from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. In addition to his many achievements and accolades, he also has a passion for just public speaking, and from that, his passion has led for him to create the Black Speakers Network, where he uses this organization to equip, empower, inspire, and connect the generation of Black professional speakers. He is also a member, and he currently serves as a member on the College Development Chair for Black Professional Men in Baltimore. So with that, I would like to welcome Brian to the podcast. Yay, Brian, man, I'm excited.
Ooh, I'm excited too.
That was a
Wow.
lot. I almost got winded.
You got my whole bio. That's what I'm talking. Not the
I
short version. You got the entire manuscript. I love it.
Yeah, so Brian, thank you for being on the podcast. It is very exciting because so many people, they know you from Facebook and all the things that you promote for Black speakers. And I want to, first of all, thank you for promoting Black speakers in general because we need that kind of support in the community. So tell me more about you and how you started to get into the field in which you're in and what was your passion?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And, first of all, before I even jump in, thank you, and for putting together this incredible platform. I mean, men and women of color, this podcast series, businessmen and women of color is just incredible. And I'm so glad that we have, thanks to you, people like you for, standing in the gap and seeing a need and filling it. And anytime that, we have a chance to leverage and build the platforms because we're in an age right now where what you're doing right now would have been impossible, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So, the fact that we not only have these tools, but leveraging them to grow and help people advance is really commendable. So thank you so much for
You're
that.
so much welcome. So tell me all about Brian Old. Who exactly is Brian Olds?
Yeah, so you actually hit the nail on the head a lot with my bio, but I'll tell you this, I am a little boy from Baltimore, Maryland, born and raised here, and I'm the son of Sheila Olds and the grandson of guy I'm named after, Brian J. The J stands for James Olds, and they really raised me. Grew up single family home, and I always talk about the fact that in high school I had a principal growing up in city schools, and he kind of started his speech with one of those iconic, look to your left, now look to the right, now take a look at yourself. One of you um, sitting in this auditorium will not be sitting in these seats 4 years from today.
Wow.
And to a certain extent, he was right. Growing up in the city of Baltimore, I call that a twisted statistic. It's actually one of my presentations, and a twisted statistic is one that has an element of truth, but doesn't necessarily tell the entire story. But what he was saying was right, because if you look at my environment and look at where I came from as as a young black man, raised in the streets of Baltimore, attending public schools, raised by a single mother. If you look at the statistics, it was more likely that I would end up in jail, be killed on the streets, or drop out of school before my 25th birthday. And so many of my friends and people that I've known have fallen to one of those fates. And it's just kind of a blessing that it hasn't. I'm 32 now, so of course, clearly, I'm still alive. I was the first person in my family to go to college, and it's 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 a good feeling to know that you don't necessarily have to fall into that statistic. And I think you know opportunities um, like this, and opportunities, and not even as opportunities, but people like you, and people that like you said, that see a need. That's kind of why I started off with that. That don't just complain about what's around them, and actually take the initiative and do something. Is the reason why I am where I am. It's nothing special about me. So yeah, definitely a little boy from Baltimore, and excited to be still here, trying to make an impact and grow as we move forward.
Okay, absolutely. Okay. And so I guess what I was trying to get out of you, Brian, is what was that defining factor? What was the moment? I asked all the speakers this because I think it's important for people who are listening to this that even though we are entrepreneurs or authors or whoever we are still human. There's a story that we have out there. There was something that happened in our life that made us go in one direction or the other. So for you, what was the defining moment in which you found yourself saying, this is my purpose, this is what I want to do as far as public speaking and empowerment for men? What was that thing?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. So in my case, I was a kid that grew up watching space shuttle launches, and I was just always fascinated by science and technology, and engineering. So naturally, I started going down that path, and that's actually what led me. I went to a vocational technical senior high school in Baltimore, and they didn't have engineering. The closest thing they had was computer repair. So, I feel like I've had little clues along the way around my purpose, because you have two types of intelligence. You have IQ, and then you have EQ, and intelligence quotient and emotional quotient. And I really feel like my entire life I've always operated with a high sense of EQ. Like I've always had empathy, and I was always the person that just naturally kind of tuned into how other people were feeling, and wanting to kind of help a situation, and be vulnerable. I was an introvert, so when going, and this will tie into the story, I promise. But it's interesting, because I tell people now that hear me speak, and certainly having this privilege of running Black Speakers Network, I was the guy that in high school and middle school, I couldn't lead two people in silent prayer, let alone be the person that's going to stand in front of a room and move an audience. So it's been a transition for sure. But I'll say some of the areas that kind of stood out to me were, I was going along this path of being an engineer, and I'm always hesitant to kind of tell this story, because right now we actually, as a country, need more people in STEM. We need more scientists, technologists, engineers. But in my particular case, I hit a wall in college, in a couple different areas. One was when you had this class called AutoCAD, and we had to draw an object on three sides, and you're supposed to have like kind of like a, if you were drawing a cup, and it would be like the top view, a side view, and like a cross sectional view. Well, my first clue was that all three of my sides looked exactly the same, and they weren't supposed to. So that kind of visual skill as an engineer wasn't there. And then on the math side, I remember hitting calculus two, and I was taking a test one day and literally did not have any answer. The test where we were 30 minutes into the test, at Morgan State University School of Engineering. I was an electrical engineer, and I had no answers. And I looked out the window for inspiration, thinking that the answer would appear in the sky. And lo and behold, it actually did. It was actually on the side of a building when I looked over, and it wasn't the answer to the test, but it was the Earl G. Gray School of Business and Management building. So I like put the pencil down, came out of engineering and subscribed for business, but that left me at a really weird place, and because I really, all this time I had been focused on, engineering, 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 but I really didn't know where I was going to go. And, being at Morgan was a really unique experience because, as you mentioned in my bio, that's what I got involved in Toastmasters. And I'd always been scared. Like, if you had seen me speak, if you had been sitting in that warm classroom that day when I gave my first presentation at Toastmasters, it was sweaty palms,
Sweaty
shaking
palms.
voice. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just like it was just like you said. So I literally did it because I saw it as a challenge, and I just inherently knew that that was a challenge that I wanted to tackle. So that first Toastmaster speech really was a light bulb moment for me, and when I survived it, I knew that it's something that I wanted to do, and I didn't know what that something was. I didn't know you could be a full-time professional speaker. I didn't know, you could go to school, graduate school, and study instructional design or adult learning and learn how to facilitate. I didn't know this entire training development field existed, but I knew that I wanted to be able to impact people. And one of the biggest, most effective ways to do that was, being in front of an audience and sharing.
Okay, so Brian, that was really amazing how you transitioned from just being in the engineering field and realizing this is just not your purpose. I think the missing piece for me is that when we start looking at public speaking in general, and I'm also new to public speaking as well because I love to teach, my actual gift is actually singing. So I can relate to when you said that you had sweaty palms, that you were nervous in front of speaking for the first time. And even though I had a talent for singing, I had tremendous, tremendous stage fright. There was times where I almost couldn't bear it, and I literally had to do what they call an out of body experience. In order, by the time I got to my out of body experience,
Yeah.
I was like the second verse in of the song, right? But I guess for the people who are listening here who want to be a motivational speaker or just do public speaking, can you kind of touch on some of the things that Toastmasters or any type of speaking organization that will help you develop that? Because I think it's important for aspiring speakers to know what to expect, what they really should be doing in order to perfect their speaking ability.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So, Toastmasters, I touch on Toastmasters and then I kind of touch on the professional speaking side. So, Toastmasters is great because as a new speaker, if you're not comfortable delivering a presentation, then, or if you haven't really developed the skills to the technical skills of speaking. And when I say technical skills, I'm talking about how to effectively open a presentation or a speech. I'll use the terms interchangeably, but opening a presentation, closing it, using visual aids, vocal variety, hand gestures, how to make eye contact, all of those things that you develop in Toastmasters and become what they call a competent communicator, you learn right there. But here's the big thing. You could practice skills all day long. But if you're not getting feedback on those skills, and that could be anything, golf, it's a sport, whatever you're doing, an instrument, you could be practicing, but if you're not getting constructive feedback, not criticism, but constructive feedback, a combination of empowerment and motivation, encouragement, as well as, hey, here's 2 or 3 things and that you can do next time to improve and incorporate into your next presentation, then you're really not going to get better. And that's what Toastmasters provide. It's a safe environment where you can come in, get skills, learn from more experienced speakers. You can test things out in a non-threatening environment and give yourself the opportunity to develop those skills so that when you have to go deliver a presentation and it's in front of, a quote unquote real audience, then you already feel more empowered and more inspired to do that. You'll feel more equipped to do that. So Toastmasters is a great place to start. If anybody's interested in listening to this podcast and want to check it out, you can go to www.toastmasters.org /find a club. And you find a club, you click on that button, and you can literally search by zip code. You can search by time of day, and you can also, kind of narrow it down by the ones closest to where you live and work, and find one that will work for you. My biggest piece of advice for finding a Toastmasters club is, in my opinion, I'm actually a member of 3 clubs to this day. And the reason for that is that each club kind of serves an individual purpose. I don't go to all 3 all the time, but I'm part of a club at work that we started in 2009. MSU Toastmasters, we charted in 2006. So that's my home club. Like, they'd be in my will. Like, I continuously be a part of that group.
Said it being your will, huh?
Yeah, the dudes will be on autopilot there. I
Oh,
always be a part.
wow.
And then there are an advanced club that only meets once a month. So all 3 of those clubs serve different purposes. Not telling you to join 3 clubs. What I am telling you to do is visit many clubs to find the one that works for you. And here's why. Toastmasters is like church. Like, every church has the same objective, but it's going to be a little bit different. Some are larger, some are smaller, and every environment is going to be a little bit different. So, visit a few and find the one that works for you. The second resource is, I would, of course, talk about Black Speakers Network, and this is really why I started it. Being in Toastmasters now for over a decade, I recognize that Toastmasters is really there to help you develop those technical skills of speaking, but the business of speaking is actually a completely separate entity. So, in order to learn that, I wanted to create an organization where we can help the brand newest person that's maybe just thinking about getting started as a professional speaker, all the way up to the person that's already doing it. So that's why Black Speakers Network was created. Our mission is to equip, inspire, and connect the next generation of Black professional speakers. This kind of came about because I started hosting my own events and seminars in 2009, and I was really passionate about speaking. But what I learned then is that I was equally as passionate about helping other speakers build their brand and connect with the audience that they are authentically meant to serve. I feel like I'm actually in the process of writing a book right now. By the time this podcast comes out, it may already be out. So go check it on Amazon. But the name of the book is Your Audience Awaits. And a part of that, the reason for that is our tagline for Black Speakers Network is "Speak Up, Your Audience Awaits," because there is an audience for everyone, in the sense that you could have the exact same topic, and if you speak on leadership, if you speak on personal development, personal finance, when you hit that stage, there's going to be a certain percentage of that audience that only you can speak to. Somebody else could have the exact same message, but only you have your unique set of experiences and life skills. So you are unique, and as that, there's an audience waiting for you. And if you don't tell your story or share your message, then there is likely many, many people that are out there that will never have that opportunity to be impacted. And especially within this being the perfect platform, the Businessmen and Women of Color podcast, as men and women of color in business, we have incredible stories. We have an incredible life experience that we've gone through that only a person that looks like you will be able to connect with another person. And unfortunately, they're not going to connect with a Tony Robbins. They may not even, connect with a Les Brown. They need to hear from you. They need to hear from the hometown you grew up in, the schools that you went to, the challenges you overcame, and that's the reason why we created Black Speakers Network, to help to create that voice. And part of our mission now is focusing on helping you understand how to grow a speaking business, and really the core elements of growing a traditional business is there. So, Anne, what we do is teach folks the 5 M's
Hmm.
of growing your
Your
speaking
business and
business.
stuff. Well, I want to take a step back for just a second before you go into that segment.
Sure.
There's one comment that I want to make just to kind of sum this up, because this was really a critical, pivotal moment of all the speakers that I had that talked about motivational speaking or any type of public speaking. You really hit on the point that you have to learn certain technical skills in order to get your message across and to tell your story. And I will have to say that public speaking is definitely not for everybody. And we can have passion and we can have the biggest dream in the world. But if you're not able to do that, you can probably take that talent and translate it into something else. So, and I'm just playing devil's advocate because I think people need to hear both sides of it, Brian. That you can go out there and go to Toastmasters and go to the clubs and learn this stuff. But you also have to be honest with yourself and say, yes, I want to be a public speaker and I want to tell everybody my story. But you have to also build up those skills, and that requires work. So you have to have an open mind in order to allow people to criticize you, which I think is another one that I want to drive home to people, is that you got to be open minded to hearing what other people think about your speech or your message or how you relate it to them or your behavior or maybe even the way you look when you said it. Those are really critical things that you have to kind of take in if you're going to be a public speaker. And I'm saying this only as
Yes.
speaking from a position of somebody who performed in front of a lot of people. And when I kind of lost my voice to sing professionally for a long time, I said, you know what? I'm going to take my skill. I may not be the best singer right now because my voice goes in and out. So I'm going to take my passion of words, not in music, but in technology of where I'm good at. Okay. So that's what
Yes.
I'm talking about. So even if somebody comes to you and say, oh, okay, well, I see you're not that great in public speaking, what else can you do with your passion? So always have a trip. So I wanted to ask that. The reason why I brought this up, Brian, because I wanted to ask you, have there ever been a time where you have witnessed or maybe had to tell someone that they could not be a public speaker, even though they had the greatest intentions and they had the best story to tell?
Well, I think, so you bring up a really good point. I mean, this probably be a good time to delineate, because I mentioned this in my book as well. I think that, and for the purposes of this conversation, it probably would be a good idea to put some definitions around public speaking and professional speaking, because people ask me all the time, like, how do I become a speaker? And my common answer is, just update your email signature. Like, everybody is a speaker to the extent that everyone probably listens to this podcast. If you think back over the last 30 days, you've probably had to give a presentation of some type, whether it's the talking to, giving a report at work, giving a toast at a wedding, an interview, maybe if you go back even further, 6 months, a more formal presentation. Like, you're going to have to communicate with a person or a group of people at some point. And I think, regardless if you are on the path to become a full-time professional speaker, the skills that you learn, in Toastmasters, and the skills that you will acquire just learning the art and of effective communication, which includes public speaking, will serve you and kind of spill over into those other areas of your life. And I give you a perfectly transparent example. I was the guy, I told you I couldn't lead two people in silent prayer. A little bit of exaggeration, but this next part is an exaggeration. So I used to, in high school, I was so afraid to talk to girls, and I was so I was so lacking in confidence to do that. I used to write out literally everything that I was going to say to her. If I God somehow intervened and I got her phone number, then when I made that call, I would write out every single thing I was going to say, and then by the time if we got to the end of the conversation, we ran out of stuff, then that was the end of the phone call. Like I literally couldn't talk to somebody else without a script. And I think, you know, public speaking and this whole notion of communication like tie hand in hand. So to answer your question, Anna, I think I really don't discourage anybody from developing their overall public speaking skills. When it comes to professional speaking, then absolutely, I think it's important to point out for people the amount of work that it takes and the commitment. And there's a combination of, skill and mastery of craft that comes with it too. Not everybody's going to be able to move an entire crowd, but I think that's with any profession. Like any profession, just because you can't get a degree in professional speaking doesn't mean that it is not going to take, you're not going to have to put in your 1,000 hours of effort and discipline. Like some people are naturally like funny and charismatic and gregarious and have high energy levels, and those things translate over well to the stage. But then there are some other speakers who they do not have any of those traits at all, and really can't they're not going to be able to naturally incorporate and become this like larger than life person on stage. But that doesn't mean they can't learn the skills. Everything that we're talking about now is a learned skill. So the only way, and that I would really tell somebody that is if they didn't have the desire to do it, or if they had the desire but maybe were too lazy, or weren't ready to do the work that it would take to get to that next level.
Right, right. I had to ask that question because I've noticed over the last several years that there has been a booming business in speaking. Whether it doesn't matter what industry you're in, they just kind of want to jump in and say, I just want to do speaking. And I think for the minority community, I wanted to also talk about the 360 view. I want to show people the 360 view, the good and the bad. You know, is this something that you can do and really be good at it and really get a message across, and making sure that you tell your story? Like, who are you actually talking to and what problem are you solving? Not just standing up there speaking and just giving out words. It's got to serve a purpose. And so when people come to your Facebook page and they see people speaking, it's definitely inspiring. But I also want people to be realistic in what their actual capability is and what really is their purpose. While there's many that can go out there and want to empower and they want to motivate and they want to show people their purpose, we have to first understand what our purpose is. And if public speaking or professional speaking is one of them, then definitely go for it. But if it's something that you can't do, take that energy and put it into the talent that you do have. And then that way you're still able to do what you want to do and serve your purpose. So I want to turn the conversation over to your men's empowerment organization that you are working with. And so you could talk about that and how you came up with that concept.
Oh yeah, so I think so. BPM. I mean, that's it's kind of confusing because I'm part of Black Speakers Network, and then my nonprofit is Black Professional Men. And just to clarify, I didn't start BPM. BPM actually I joined as a member in 2009, and it's been an amazing experience. For those of you that aren't familiar, BPM, or Black Professional Men, is a Baltimore-based nonprofit organization that has the mission to ensure the future of the African American male. Very broad mission there, but that's, when you look around, all you have to do is, turn on the news and see why that's important. To as we record this, it is we Baltimore in the year 2017. Baltimore, we're 100 days into the year, and we just had our 100th homicide in the city, and it's literally heartbreaking. And you know, most the overwhelming vast majority of those people on that list that you know were here with us at the end of 2016 and no longer with us now are black men. So that being the case, this organization was actually founded by three men: Scott Phillips, Edwin Avent, and Drew Hawkins. Back in 1991, and our mayor at the time, Kurt Smoke, had issued a challenge to them. They were in his office, had gotten a meeting with him, and issued a challenge of, you know, trying to figure out what he was going to do to fix these systemic issues in the city: violence, literacy, incarceration. And he flipped the script on him and said, "Hey, you know, here's some things I was thinking about, but here's the real issue. You know, what are you going to do?" It's kind of like the John F. Kennedy thing, like ask not what our country can do for you. Same thing. You could and take country out and insert city or community or you know whatever, and that's what they did. So they founded this organization, and essentially our charter is to address the social, political, and economic awareness needs of the African American community. And you know, BPM over the course of since the inception, there have been over 500 you know men who meet on a monthly basis in the city of Baltimore that serve on a number of different committees, whether it be um, uh, you know, scholarship and awards, whether it be going into the classrooms or the schools to speak directly to students, community service, partnering with other nonprofits, organizations with the same mission. So that's been a great experience. I'm currently the college development chair for that. So I have a cohort of five boys, five young men that will be attending, that are graduating from Baltimore City Schools this year, that'll be attending colleges and universities in the fall. We do an annual scholarship and awards breakfast for them, where we recognize and celebrate them and also recognize black men in the community that are making a difference as well.
That is phenomenal. That is phenomenal. I wish that we hear more of this type of thing, not just the city of Baltimore, but throughout the greater Washington, D.C. area, because there are so many of our young men who are at risk, and even older men. All men are at risk, in my opinion. And I really want to applaud you and also the BPM for reaching out to these young men and fostering them, because that is where my passion is to make sure that we are safe and educated. And that's where I am. And I'm hoping, I'm speaking to everybody who's listening to this podcast, that I really want everybody to reach out to this organization and lend your services to make sure that we keep our young men, our black men, and all men really, because the crime rate is ridiculous. That's a whole nother podcast, Brian. I don't even want to go there. But I just think that, overall, we have done, I would say the people who I have met so far and some of the people I haven't met have done a phenomenal job in trying to empower our young men and women. I think more so, even though there's a lot of women empowerment groups, we need just as many men empowerment groups. I
Yes.
believe we do. There is the 100 Black Men, there's your organization, and I'm pretty sure there's quite a few others out there, but not as many as women empowerment groups. And I want to encourage people like yourself and people who are listening to make sure that you start this trend, because it is bigger than us. We're looking at the whole community as a whole and how we're diminishing as we speak. And the whole reason why this podcast also exists is because we need to recognize that we can change the situation that we're in. That's my philosophy. It doesn't have to be this way. We can make a choice and make a change. And if we can just come together and make a stronger community, we can help our young men and women to stay off the streets, or to be on drugs, or being killed by the police, or because they're in the wrong place at the wrong time doing the wrong thing. And we need more of our young men to be empowered on so many different levels. And so thank you for jumping in and being a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, It's a labor of love for sure, and you can be a part of the problem or part of the solution.
Be part of the solution. So, what other initiatives are you working on in addition to all of what you got on your plate so far?
So I think, the biggest thing right now, my main focus is, of course, growing Black Speakers Network. And just to kind of end that story, we launched BSN is something that's been on my heart for a while now. And really, so I work for the last 10 years, I've worked for a human capital company, one of the largest staff and recruiting agencies in the U.S. And I currently work as a program manager in our Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And so with that, I kind of saw, I went from being an engineer, right, or want to be engineer to trying to figure out like where my career was going to go. I was actually hired a week before I walked across stage at Morgan State University and had been with the company ever since and held a number of different careers, backgrounds, corporate training and development. Did that for 3 years before coming over to diversity and inclusion. I still like I had no idea I was going to end up in diversity and inclusion. In fact, to this day, I still call myself, an accidental HR professional. But it's interesting because I literally have had this career progression where, sometimes I feel like we put so much pressure on ourselves to try to figure out, what we're going to do with our life and our career. And really it's that mantra of success is where preparation and opportunity meet. The job that I have now wasn't even created until 2011, and I started with the company in 2007. So there's been this convergence of things that happened. Me starting my own, me switching majors, joining Toastmasters, being hired here, doing, uh, you know, finding different opportunities to continue to grow personally and professionally, making a decision to go back to school, getting a master's certificate in instructional design. So all these different things started converging without me really even realizing it, and it was pretty cool. So it's kind of like this convergence for me was the intersection of speaking and training and diversity, and that's really kind of how BSN was born. And really, that was officially we officially kicked off at the beginning of 2016. It was just the group of folks that I started my first seminar workshop company with, and we really didn't know exactly how it was going to work out, but we said, we think this is a need, we want to do it, and made it happen, and that we grew from literally 12 people meeting in my best friend's conference room to now a global network of 1,000 speakers. We're currently in 35 states, about 13 countries, and continue to grow each day. And I think, when you talk about my focus, that's really what my focus right now is. We host virtual experiences, seminars, workshops, connection to resources. We have a platform partners program, so that's making sure that as a speaker, you need to be able to market and brand yourself. You may need coaching around specific areas, so we have a network of entrepreneurs who specialize in services for speakers. So continuing to create products and develop tools and resources for our network is my primary focus right now. And the other big thing is, just as I think about, kind of like the next step in my own career and my space within the speaking realm, similar to you, and I still fell in love. I still love technology, so now it's kind of a beautiful thing
Mm-hmm.
where I've gotten back to the place where I've started, where
Mm-hmm.
even though I can't be an engineer, I'm still blending speaking with tools and technology. So my main focus right now is helping entrepreneurs and speakers specifically, identify, what I call the power system tools for success. Those, critical tools to help you be more efficient and more effective at reaching your audience, growing your business, and ultimately being able to share your message.
Wow, that sounds phenomenal. So, you mentioned before the podcast that you had some steps that you wanted to talk about that you thought would be helpful for listeners to know. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. So
Okay.
and it's really I don't know if this that is really kind of our model of how we think about building an effective speaking business. So if you're on the fence, you're listening to this and you're like, man, I don't even know what it takes to become a speaker, or I don't even know kind of where to start. What we walk folks through, and anybody that's interested, we have a guide that kind of walks all of our new speakers through this, and there's um, really a self-reflection tool to kind of ask yourself. But we look at what we call the five critical areas of building a speaking business, or the five M's. And this is a model that we developed to help you think about the five areas that you would need to really pay attention to in order to grow your speaking brand. And those are, your mission, your message, your marketing, monetization, and the management of your speaking business and getting clarity. And I'll briefly kind of elaborate on each one. Your mission, of course, is thinking about the audience that you serve and why you speak. So going back to what you were saying earlier, and not everybody is going to be a speaker, right? Not everybody necessarily needs to
Right.
speak. If you can't get clarity on the not only why you speak, but also um, the audience that you are meant to serve. Because if you speak to everyone, you ultimately speak to no one. Um, that's key. So sometimes speakers are first starting out, they want to jump immediately to the number one question we always get. You can probably guess it, and is how do I get more speaking engagement? Like
Yeah,
how do I
that is definitely going to be the number one question. How you even get the first one, really, if you're a brand new one, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it comes down to like that first thing, like because if you can't clearly tell a person, if you're not clear on your mission, that means you can't be clear on the second end, which is your message. Um, then it's going to be impossible for you to build a business case to a meeting plan or really anybody else around why they should listen to you. Because what you said earlier was right. The speaking industry has evolved, and I don't even particularly like the term motivational speaker. I mean, people still get hired under those titles, but the reality, at the end of the day, people aren't paying for a speaker, they're paying for a result. They're paying for somebody to come in to address a business need that they have. Now, that need could be to inspire, it could be to entertain, it could be to, but more than likely, it's going to be to educate and to impart, some wisdom or some information to your audience. And for you to do that, you need to be able to demonstrate that you are, in fact, an expert in that area. But so mission, message is really around refining your craft of how you communicate with your audience. So, going back to Toastmasters, there are so many different types of speakers. You could be a keynote speaker, you could be a trainer, which is more like a workshop facilitator, a panelist. You could be a person that one of the areas that I focus on really heavily now is serving as a master of ceremony and really like leading a program. So there are so many different ways that you could deliver your message, even with technology, with webinars. So we help speakers get clear on what type of speaker you are. The third M is marketing, which is a big piece. We all probably know speakers who are fall into one or two categories or situations. First, speaker A is, you go into a seminar or a conference and you're like, man, that speaker is amazing. And you think to yourself, they just have, they're great on the stage and they could tell a great story and all this. But then you have another type of speaker that, and that person, may not be, great at marketing, but they, are great at telling a story. Then you have other speakers who may be, not the greatest speaker, and you're scratching your head like, man, how did they even get booked? Like, I could tell a better story than that. Like, how, like, that even makes sense. Like, you're just trying to figure out, like, how they even got booked.
How
But
they
then,
even got booked, right?
yeah, like, what happened? But then you go to that website and you see, like, branded collateral, you see professional headshot, you
Yep.
see a profession, like, you see that their package is legit. You go to their social media and they're posting on a regular basis, they're blogging, they got YouTube videos. So, they are marketing to their audience and they're crystal clear on who they market to. So even if they're not the best speaker, they got that covered. So we spend a lot of time and energy on that. Monetization is huge. That's ensuring that you can repackage, repurpose, and deliver your information in different forms. And that's critical because, as a speaker, you want to be able to establish multiple streams of income. So we talk about that a lot. And then the final piece is management. So making sure, like with any business, that you have the tools and creating processes and systems for yourself to effectively run your business and not have your business run you.
Now, in this podcast, people are going to hear me say over and over again, you have to use the tools that's being presented to you by these wonderful folks because they're not just writing a book that says, okay, this is good to read. They're actual tools that you can use to help your business. So it doesn't take but a few dollars and a click of a button to go to their website and pick up their book or to download whatever document that they have that can help you with your business, or even just spend a few dollars to go to a workshop. Because I went to one last month where it was about marketing and branding, and it was worth every single penny. Trust me when I tell you, it was worth every single penny to go and get that information to help me with my business. And so I'm encouraging everybody to definitely get that. So, with that, Brian, this is a networking event. People are listening, people are participating. What do you need to thrive?
Yeah, that is a great question. So I think and I appreciate that. And again, I appreciate the opportunity you putting this out there. You're really what I need right now is really talented people in those areas that I mentioned before. So if as we're building again, we call it the platform partner program, um, and given the fact that BSN now has representation in most of the U.S. and other countries, we want to create a portal of really reliable, really talented business professionals that we can attract and have a one-stop shop to be able to get your needs met as a speaker. So that program is currently open. You'll see seeing more information about it as we continue to move forward. But if you know great graphic designers, videographers, photographers, PR specialists. I know a number of our sponsors. Arlena Waller, she actually just spoke on one of our webinars a few weeks ago with She Powers. Phenomenal people that specialize in elevating your branding, business coaches, even editors, folks. We did. Robert Kennedy has a group speak right now, and he brought in two amazing editors to talk to us a couple nights ago, professors at Bowie State University, and he talked about like the editing process and how important it is to make sure that your brand stands out. So anybody that provides professional services that you have personally used or that you know about that does really great work in any of those areas, I would say is a 100% need for BSN right now. Obviously, we need members. I think we're naturally going to attract, folks that are ready to grow and develop as a speaker. So if that's you, I invite you to, visit us at blackspeakersnetwork.com. Click the link to sign up, and you'll start receiving information and updates. It's free to join. You'll get emails and updates from us on a daily basis. We have a Facebook group that you can interact and introduce yourself and be able to connect with other speakers, as well as access to online content and resources. But the biggest thing outside of that, new members is, identifying those, that next cohort of platform partners.
Fantastic. And so I want everybody to really take this in and take advantage of the opportunity that Brian has presented on the podcast, because it is really important that we step outside of our comfort zone and change our mindset on how we see ourselves in the industry, especially if we are working professional, working for someone else, or we're trying to be an entrepreneur, or even a public speaker or an author or whatever it is. We have to not be afraid to come out and ask questions and really implement some of the things that people are sharing on this podcast. So I want to encourage everybody again to please visit all the pages, listen to all the podcasts, and reach out to folks. Their contact information is below. So is Brian, so is mine if you want to reach out to me. And so, with that, Brian, I would like to thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing with us this amazing information, especially about how to be a public speaker or professional speaker, and just to really empower our young men out there today to be better than what they are now.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure. And I'll just sign out by saying what we always say at all of our, always end all my emails and everything with this, which is, speak up because your audience awaits. Don't wait for nobody. You don't need permission from anybody. Just go out and do it. And thank you, Ann, for being one of those shining examples of somebody that just went out and did it. So thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you all.
You're welcome.